Hi everybody, we just had our third session of Fantasy Age, Alma's second session. This is Alma, she plays one of our two mages, and she's going to join us for today's recap. So this session, we had really two sessions in one, because we ended the first storyline where you folks had crashed in the mountains, and then you guys made it onto the valley that was your destination all along, and we did that story as well. So let's start with the first half. Jarrod?
Well, so when we were in the mountains, we had settled down at the end of the last session to rest, but then of course our rest was interrupted because there's always an encounter.
Yep.
And so you as the GM had introduced this ogre tribe, the Hard Lake tribe.
Yep.
Which are ranger, rogue, I forget what he is in the Fantasy Age.
They're Ranger
structure.
Rogue is mostly where they live. Yeah. Because I thought, how interesting would it be if we had vegetarian ogres?
Yes.
Right.
So he noticed, and then you in character spoke as one of them, and he spoke back, and it set up a non-combat dialogue.
Right.
Which was a fun break from the normal trope of interrupt in the middle of the night and immediately start fighting for your lives.
Yes. Well, they snuck up on you guys slowly, and they weren't making any big aggressive moves. In fact, my notes were, if you guys started attacking them, they would defend themselves and withdraw, because they come from this animist tribe, and they're really they're kind of Buddhist-ish, right? They're not really into doing harm, although they will defend themselves. And then Alma got to run into, have a couple of neat scenes when you guys went back to their cave and met their matron, the head of the tribe.
What was
Her name was Mundunga Smartnose.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Mundunga was like the rank, meant head of the tribe, and then Smartnose was her name.
So we spoke to her. We talked about the plant life that lived there.
Right.
And
Well, they're farmers. They know a lot about plants, right?
Yes,
That's
yes.
the big topic of conversation for farmers.
and their tastes were very much not what I would like. It was very bitter. So we did learn about what they grow, and from there, I didn't really do much there though. It was more afterwards when we went back.
Okay, so fill us in on that.
Okay, so after a while, she pretty much said, "You guys don't belong here. You need to leave." I don't think she was trying to be rude, but it kind of sounded that way a little bit.
That was her, yeah.
Okay, yeah okay.
Blunt
So-
to a fault, that was her.
And so we ended up going back to fix our ship, and while we were almost finishing up fixing the ship, and we turned on the balloons, and we were about to get ready to go, and then all of a sudden we hear the stomping of the
Sons of the Dead Gods.
Sons of the Dead Gods.
The enemy tribe of the Hard Lake tribe.
So everybody started panicking, and we just said, "All right, everybody get on the ship," and everybody, including our helpers, got on the ship, and then we couldn't make the ship go.
Yeah. So
Because
each
they
of these
were too
ogres weighs in
heavy.
at about 400 pounds. So now there's an extra 1,200 pounds in your gondola. And that gondola's not going anywhere. And here comes the Hard Lake tribe. And the Hard Lake tribe are what everybody thinks of when I say ogre. They are flesh eaters, they are vicious, they are murderous. They don't mind if what they're eating is sentience, as long as they'd probably eat each other if they were hungry enough. They're all the nasty things you think of when I say ogre. And here they come charging at you guys. And this is where, Jarrod, you jumped in and started taking advantage of the feats that Fantasy Age allows.
Well, the stunt system is what I enjoyed, because you roll doubles out of your 3 dice because you're rolling 3d6, and if you roll doubles, then your stunt die, whatever one you specify, that number gives you points to use, and so we as a team took advantage of that because we have all these. We have the friendly ogres on the ship that we have to get off the ship, and so we have to talk to them. Then the evil ogres are trying to climb on the ship, which we need to rise into the air to fly away. So we started making liberal use of this skirmish stunt, which thankfully in the rules it says you can use unlimited, there's no limit to the number of times you can use it as long as you have stunt points.
Right.
So all we had to do is keep using that one stunt that pushes your foe back 1 or 2 meters, knock them off the ship, get enough of them off the ship that we can rise up and get away.
Exactly.
I
So
think-
yeah, mine were trying to climb on and capture you guys and take you back for dinner.
Mhm.
And you guys were constantly using that skirmish stunt to push them back. I know at the very climax, we had an ogre that was half on, half off, and trying to climb back on.
It was a fun use of both in-game communication, because when they said get on the ship, everyone in the area got on the ship,
Yeah,
not
ogres,
just the party.
Hard Lake Tribe, everybody.
And then the rules of the game system, it allowed for that tactical combat. It's not just stand there and swing at things. It's what can you do when you have an exceptional moment. I think at one point, I think it was that battle, we may have cheated because we stacked a bonus damage stun twice in one turn, which the rules said, don't do that. Instead, you got to buy a more expensive stunt that does that amount of damage.
Because there's one stunt that costs 2 stunt points and does 1 extra damage.
Mhm.
And there's one that costs 5 stunt points and gives you 2 extra
Yes.
damage. So I guess they wanted it to cost a little bit more to get that.
They've got the action economy there. And then we
Right.
also took stunts off of the combat list and allowed them to use with spells. So we combined the combat and spell lists.
Which are we allowed to do that?
It doesn't really specify.
Yeah, so I haven't gone delving deep into the rules. My gut usually DMs when the rule books are sitting over anywhere out of immediate reach. If I've got a rule directly in front of me, I'll look at it, but otherwise I just DM for the gut and run with it. And so even though like we made that mistake about stacking and stuff that they're not supposed to, okay, future games, we know now we won't do that again. We were naughty.
I'd liked the tactical utility on the combat list, and I think it worked with her spell use. And I've played in other games where you can start adding tactical variations onto the spells anyway, so why not combine certain ones together? It wasn't a problem. I enjoyed using the stunts and mixing the stunts.
Well, it made for a good dramatic moment.
Yes.
And that's, in any RPG, that's what we really want, right? We want exciting moments that we can talk about in front of our friends, right? So that part was good. So then you guys finally get away. You knock off the last of the ogres. You feel a couple of spears and rocks get thrown up at the underside of your ship. But that's that classic flying away into the distance scene. And you guys finally are free, and you make it the rest of the way over the mountains with little trouble. And that wraps up our first half of the session. So then we get to the second half of the session where you folks arrive in Lancook Valley. And to recap, you were traveling with a major NPC, and he was going to look for his old master, who was a painting instructor, because he had studied to be a painter before he became his brother's squire. And really his heart is still in art, except for the fact that he's very loyal to family. And so you guys arrive in Lancook Valley, land of excessively friendly locals. And so how did you guys feel about that? So they left you behind at the ship initially.
Well, I'm playing just a fighter, so I'll be the guard.
Yep. And you and John are playing the grunt, so of course you get all the scut work, right? And then you came and joined them for tea, along with the rest of the PCs.
Which a lot of the people were drinking tea there and were way too happy.
Very happy. They were super cheerful, frighteningly happy. These
Yes.
people are happy to see you all the time. All the time. Everything's wonderful. Everything's great all the time. It was a dead tip-off that something was wrong.
Oh yes, most definitely. And then especially there was 2 characters that weren't drinking the tea, so
Yes.
that even made it a little bit more suspicious. So to me, it was, they're not drinking, why? I'm not gonna drink this tea. Because
Right.
everybody else is, no. It was just too awkward.
Yep.
So it did cause that suspicion in there. And then to me, those were the people that were kind of like the leaders of the cult. And
So yeah, that was a theory on your side of the screen.
Yes.
Both you and Joshua had the
Yes.
same theory, that the 2 people who weren't drinking the tea must be the head bad guys.
Yes.
And everybody drinking this tea, which later turns out to be peyote tea. So it's this psychedelic tea that they're drinking. Everybody else must be a bad guy because they're drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Except these 2 who aren't, they must be the masterminds.
Yes, that's exactly what went through our minds.
Unfortunately,
That was not true.
that was exactly the opposite. Jarrod, you called this a trope subversion, not a Trump subversion. I would like to subvert Trump, but that's a different thing. A trope subversion.
Well, you had multiple tropes broken or subverted throughout the entire session, but this is another one where the people that we think are the ones keeping a clear head and being the leaders and the bad guys are innocents in the whole thing. And all the people who are overly friendly and drinking the tea happen to be these possessed invasion of the body snatchers moments.
Yep. Well, I wanted to do Invasion of the Body Snatchers meets a 1980s after-school special about drug abuse. So I wanted a don't do drugs message, so all the bad guys did the drugs. But I also wanted to do Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And also it was a chance for me to keep tying in this idea that there are parallel dimensions that are starting to intersect with your world. You guys have encountered that once in the form of the raptors in the very first session. Then there was no appearance of that in the second session until, no at all in the second session. And then in this session, I wanted to bring that theme back again so that it remained a present theme. So you guys were dealing with these creatures that would jump into someone and literally jump and wrap themselves around their heart. They sort of became spectral and wrapped around a person's heart, and that's where they'd feed and control the person's psyche. And so that's where the bad guys were. And so they were all drinking this tea because being a psychedelic enhancer, it boosted up all of their mental energy and all their spirit energy, and that gave the creatures more to feed on. And that was the secret about why the drugs were working. And these two poor people who only knew that their friends were not acting like their friends anymore once they drank the tea and didn't know anything else but hated it, looked like the mastermind villains to you guys and had to be dealt with.
Well, and that's in the first half of the session where Josh is talking to the ogres.
Yep.
And we subvert the trope. They're friendly, and he communicates with them. And then the moment we have these tea drinkers, and John goes off and tries to get information from one of them and use the flirt stunt, and ends up getting attacked in a moment away from the party. And he escapes, runs back to us, warns us all. Combat starts. Josh immediately gets up and pins one of the non-tea drinkers.
Yep. Doesn't
believe his cries of innocence and ends up killing an innocent.
Yeah, it was horrible. And I had, so everybody you've seen in the first video, I have these little reference cards where I write down, I put a picture of the character on one side, and then on my side are notes. And I had in giant boldface at the bottom, not possessed. So when Joshua ran the guy through, I said, okay, flip over the card. And he went, oh no! Right? And now that added a new level of player psychic tension. Every time you guys dispatched one of these fighters, one of these enemies, you were wondering, did we get a human or did we get somebody possessed? And I thought that part led to an interesting, I didn't plan that. It wasn't, when I made the cards, that just said not possessed. So I could remember who was and wasn't possessed, and I wouldn't mess up on my side of the role play. But it wound up being this dramatic reveal each time you guys engaged one.
Well, and then I got into a combat with one, and it started like tackling and wrestling, so it was less lethal. And then I drew the sword to finish the combat, and then the moment you said that I did enough damage to kill them, that there was no blood, that we could see that there was something wrong with the body at that point, to reflect that there are the people who bleed, which are still human, and there are the people who don't bleed because their hearts are now compressed and controlled.
Exactly.
And so then after we dispatched all the foes in that moment, we went off after the other non-tea drinker, but we decided not to engage in combat with that one.
Right.
No.
Right.
Because I was the one who went after the other non-tea drinker. She left, and so I followed her thinking, she's the bad guy. She's going to go plan something, or I'm going to hear her, I don't know, chant or something. Yes. Yeah. And so when I followed her and she was just composing music, I said, oh, how dull and boring. So I just turned around, walked back to the tea party.
And showed up for a fight scene.
And showed up for a fight scene, yes. I was like, whoa, 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 what's going on? Why are we being attacked by the happy people?
Because the happy people were very naughty. Yeah, absolutely. So this is another case where we got to do some neat stunts and some neat features. The major NPC that was the impetus of the plot did get possessed. I tried so hard to possess John, and he just kept rolling ridiculously high rolls while I was rolling just mediocre rolls. I even critically failed trying to possess him once. I rolled 3 ones. Oh, wow. And I was like, oh God. So, I so wanted to have that great player character versus player character moment in the possession scene, and I just didn't get it. The best I got was NPC for ally versus player characters. It was still pretty dramatic. And then Bob rescues him Because Bob's mage, the other mage in the campaign, Alma is a healing mage, and Bob's character is more of a meta magic mage. He studies how magic works and this kind of stuff. He's the lower knowledge character, whereas you're more of the doing character. And he had used some magic detection to figure out that there was this energy ball around the center of the heart. So he aimed his bolt right at that and actually was able to shatter the shadow bat that was enveloping the NPC's heart and rescued the NPC, which I thought was kind of neat. I had written that in for you guys to get rescued, but I didn't get to possess you guys. Next time I'll possess all.
Well, we did have a ratcheting tension moment, because then you said that these incorporeal bats are appearing from little planar gates that are appearing in mid-air at almost random moments when we're not paying attention. So the entire party is rolling perception almost every round to avoid getting attacked again.
Because they would always attack whoever was distracted.
Yes. And then we discovered that the mages could immediately affect them and shoot them out of the air. So we set a trap by having Josh act distracted. But then you told us after the fact that there was a way that we could find that players could have done physical damage.
Yes.
But we never were able to do it. All the arrows we fired just went right through them.
That's right. But there is a way. I don't give players no-win scenarios unless that's in the nature of the campaign. Like if we were running a Cthulhu game and you run into some great old evil, well, yeah, it's a no-win scenario. Because in a Cthulhu game, just slowing them down is a victory. You don't get to defeat them. But in a high adventure game like this, I wouldn't hit you guys with a no-win scenario. It's just that the way to win, you guys haven't stumbled on yet. But don't worry, you haven't seen the last of the shadow bats. You'll have plenty more opportunities to figure out how to deal with things like that. We're still early in the campaign, and I'm still laying the groundwork and setting up the major characters and the major villains and the recurrent monsters. So you guys will get to see plenty more of that. Don't you worry. I know how much players love being possessed and having their character taken away from them, and I won't let you down.
Okay.
So you guys finally decided that this was not the fight for you, because only the mages could handle them, and the mages were running low on spell points.
Yes.
And so we ended this session with you folks heading back to Falcon's Reach and saying, okay, we're going to inform people and send somebody to come deal with this, but it's going to take mages. And we've only got a couple of mages and not enough firepower to deal with this problem. We're going to go get help, or at least spread the word.
A tactical withdrawal.
A tactical withdrawal. It's fair. Because I don't think you guys could have held on. I don't think you guys were equipped to hold on indefinitely there. But you did make a major breakthrough. You did sort of break up this clutch of possessed and deal with those. You just didn't solve the larger problem. But I'm going to treat that as foreshadowing, and we'll get more of that going in future sessions. Final thoughts? Anything that really stood out? I know we kind of talked through the session after we played, but anything that's still like, oh, that was a really neat moment, or oh, we could have done that better.
I think we did a pretty good job during the first half of getting the ugly ogres off our ship.
Right,
to be
using the
able to-
skirmishing.
Yes. And then during the second half, I think the best part was just me coming back from seeing Octavia, which is the one lady that wasn't drinking tea, and coming back to seeing everybody fighting, not really knowing what was going on. So I just started shooting at random things. Like I shot at one of the portals that one of the bats was coming through. Nothing happened, and then I started shooting at the bat-like things, and that's when I realized, okay, I can hurt these things, so I'll try doing that. But it was interesting.
Cool. Jarrod?
I mean, the story is fun, and the world, having played in the prologue game, is still, a lot of fun to delve into. And I'm still just enjoying the stunt features of Fantasy Age, because I compare it to like the Eberron optional rules for D&D included action points. Spend action points to like win rolls, to do amazing things, but it never had a list of amazing things to do, and now I have a list.
Yeah. If anything, what I'm hoping we're going to do pretty soon is start adding to that list. I've noticed a few places where, it would be really neat if there were this stunt or that stunt, especially in the role-playing chart. The role-playing chart, The stunts are mostly based on the assumption that you're in conflict with another character and you're debating them or arguing with them. But there are a lot of other flavors of role play, and I'd love to bring some of those flavors into the stunt point system as well. Like just, oh, you're having a conversation with people. I'd like to spend some stunt points to notice things about them.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to spend some stunt points to, I don't want to win them over or batter down their arguments, but I want to improve their feeling toward me. I want to ingratiate myself, or I want to impress them. And I'd love to work some of that in, maybe play with the exploration as well. I don't think there are any stunts they have I don't like, but that definitely I keep seeing like, oh, it would be neat if.
Yeah.
Yes.
And since Fantasy Age has a pretty living community, I'm hoping to add a few things out there and put them out there for the fan community. And I'll definitely be pestering you guys for ideas. And when we come up with some good ones, we'll probably roll them out right here and then put them in the doobly-doo. All right, well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing with everybody. So that's our recap of session 3 of Fantasy Age Regenesis, and you keep watching, we'll be back.